We're halfway through the year, which makes it a perfect time for you to slow down and pause and take a look at where you are financially, especially if the year hasn't been going quite the way you expected to. When things aren't going the way you want them to, it's really easy for scarcity to seep in. And you might feel like you want to pull back. But the question really is, should you actually be doubling down on generating more revenue? So we're going to go through looking at where's your money going? Why are you working maybe so hard and not getting the returns that you're looking for, and things didn't go the way you thought they would? And when is it time to trim expenses versus lean into growth? So that's what we're going to dive into today. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alecia St. Germain, founder of The Conscious Edge, where I help women entrepreneurs get out of their own way so they can build the wealth that they want for a lifetime and enjoy the process of doing it. So this week, or recently, at the time that I'm recording this, it would have been just last week, I sat down with my bookkeeper, and she does accounting and is going through and coaching me around finances, because I really made a commitment this year that I wanted to be very connected to my finances and really understand what inflow coming into my business and outflow going out of my business, what that meant about the key decisions that I could make in my business. And as I started on this journey, so many of my clients and other people I have talked to, it has been hugely valuable for them as well to stop being so reactive in their business and to not just be compliant when it comes to how you look at your financials, but actually use the financials to make key decisions about your business. So as part of this process, at the very beginning of the year, Jen Boss of Peak to Peak Solutions, sat down and created a budget for my business based on the most important goals that I have. And that's one of the things that I really love about how Jen lays out the budget, is not just looking at what's the goal maybe that looks good, but really asking what is the vision for your business, and in this particular year, what is the thing that you want to focus on? And so for me personally, I really wanted to focus on increasing the salary that I was paying myself from the business, so that, I've invested for many years. I've reinvested almost everything that the business makes back into infrastructure, being better at doing the business, serving my clients better. And so I've taken a lot less pay for myself in the process of building that business, which is a story that I hear all the time. Sometimes it comes from needing knowledge, and that's why you're investing back into your business. Sometimes it's the need for infrastructure. But sometimes what you find is that the reason that you're spending money on your business versus paying yourself is because there's a big assumption in the background that's running that is wanting you to self-protect, maybe feeling like you don't offer enough value, you don't know enough. And so when you have those big assumptions, those beliefs that run in the background about who you are, how you exist in the world, and the way the world works, it drives decision making in a way that can be counterproductive to the actual goals of your business. So going through this year and starting to really connect to my financials, also I could see where big assumptions that are operating in the background will show up in your business based on your spending habits, based on what you choose to invest in. So it's really fascinating to look at it from a different angle. And Jen and I have had many conversations about how the work that she does, the work that I do, complements each other so well, because the financials of your business are the manifestation of your mindset. And so when we're talking about her giving the actual tangible evidence, and then me looking at what's in the background of those decision making that you've made, we can oftentimes find a link between what you believe to be true and what decisions you make in your business and what happens in your business financially. So that's why I think the work that I'm doing with Jen is crucial. And every single business owner, absolutely, whether you enjoy it or not, needs to slow down and start looking at the financials, not from the perspective of being compliant and doing your own bookkeeping, but learning to look at your financials from a perspective that drives really good decision making, like a business owner, deciding what to invest in, deciding where to cut costs when it's not appropriate, deciding when to double down on revenue. So these are all the things that really make a sustainable business. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. This podcast is really about the journey that we go on as business owners and wealth builders. That is the whole human experience, the ups, the downs, the sideways. And myself and my regular co-host, Jonathan, who's not here today, we work very hard to share from a real place to help you to not feel alone in this journey that you're on, because a lot of times your neighbors, your friends, the other people around you and your family, they don't always understand what it is and what drives us as entrepreneurs to go forward. And so having this place where you feel like, wow, I'm normal, like there's other people like me, is really part of what we're all about. And raising that awareness that business isn't just about making money. It's about approaching about taking a holistic approach to your business so that the business that you build is aligned to your values, to what your soul is here to do and contribute in the world. And so that we spread more good in the world because of everything. I think this world just needs more good people who are serving their soul's mission, and you get to make money doing it too. So welcome. Hit that follow or subscribe button from wherever you're listening to. And if you've been here for a while, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. So as we're going through this budget that we've set up, in the first half of the year, we set some goals on revenue. We went through all of my expenses in the initial part of the year, being able to go through and see what I was spending my money on in the business helped me see that I had some tech that I wasn't utilizing at the max. So I was able to make some decisions to cut some costs. And ultimately, I run my business very lean. So I don't have a lot of extra things at this point that I invest in outside of what I need to deliver and what I need to do from an administrative point of view and market my business. So when we went through the first half of the year, the first thing I want to comment about is that we set some revenue goals that would help me to achieve my goal. Now, my goal was really by the end of the year to be in a position that I could raise my salary for the next year. So I didn't have this expectation that I was going to do it right now immediately. But what I loved about how Jen challenged me is she said, you know what, let's stretch a little bit. Let's get your income up sooner. Let's see if we can move that sooner. And so let's budget for you to increase your income sooner. And then as the year goes on and we see how things play out, we can always change things. So that's one of the other benefits of doing a budget ahead of time and doing your budget as a plan for growth is that you can see what is needed from you in order to achieve whatever your goals are. So whether that's paying yourself more, Many times entrepreneurs are looking to replace an income that they had from a job that you had, from a lifestyle that you're used to living. Some people will make that transition into full-time entrepreneurship, making less, but appreciating that the fact that they're making less is allowing the autonomy and the freedom to do what they want to do. Some people don't have the luxury, so they're working 2 jobs and they're trying to figure out, when do I feel safe to actually leave my job? And so being able to pay yourself regularly. And then some people, I find, have like this, they have created a kind of income in their business that is very up and down and very volatile. And so it creates this constant on edge of like, I'm either flush with cash or I have to scrimp and save, and like, I'm freaking out because I don't know where the next piece of, the next income or revenue is coming from. And I think from a stability standpoint and from a place of feeling secure and in your business, being able to do a budget and plan things out a little differently than in that feast or famine type thing, where maybe you're paid on commission, maybe you are someone who, when you have a deal that you flipped and sold, you have a lot of cash, and then when you redeploy that money out into the next investment, you don't have a lot. That constant up and down is not sustainable. It gets old after a while, and you can become, when you're flush with cash, you can become a little bit of a slave to the lifestyle that you create. And then when you don't have that cash coming in, it feels really unsafe. And I am a stand for your business creating safety for you, creating a feeling of stability, knowing that you are in control of the finances and how much you make and how much is brought in and what effort is put in, that no one can fire you because of a decision. You are the one that ultimately has full choice and autonomy of what happens in your business. So being able to look at your business from that standpoint of a CEO, of like, how do I build a business that is stable, sustainable, even if the cash flow is up and down, the revenue that comes in is up and down? How can I create stability within that by planning for it ahead of time? I think that's really important to start to do. Now, so as we're going through and we have this budget, we review it quarterly. In the second quarter, I had a lot of seeds that I was planting from a revenue standpoint that we weren't sure how they were going to play out. There was a lot of things that I chose to test in revenue generation in the first half of the year. So we didn't make any changes to the budget after first quarter, knowing that I would have a lot more information by the time the second quarter finished up. And we did. So as we were looking at first the revenue that came into the business, it was a lot lower than what we had budgeted for, what we had planned for. Not that it was bad, but that it was a lot lower than what we planned for in order for me to be able to be in a position to raise my salary and know that I could cover my salary plus any of the tax implications of increasing my salary. So the first question that I asked myself is, okay, what attributed to me not having that increased revenue? Like, what didn't work? There were some things that I tried that did not work. But also the other thing that I went in and I looked at, and this is the same thing that I do with my clients, is when you have a plan and you tell me that it's something that maybe is a little stretchy for you, but you feel really confident that you can do it, and then you don't, you want to look at what happened. What decisions did you make that led to that not panning out? What did you test that maybe there was something about it that the return on it wasn't going to be there, whatever it was. So I had made a decision from last year not to do another summit because I felt that for the return on my time, energy, and resources, I could create the same results without doing a summit. And I did, which meant that my expenses from last year to this year were lower. And my revenue was the same from last year to this year, but it wasn't the growth that I was looking for. And so when I looked into my mindset, I was like, okay, so where did I hold back? Where did I not go all in? What was I doing with my time, energy, and resources that led to this result of not having the revenue generation that I wanted to? And so for me personally, what I realized was a couple things. One is I invested a lot of the time that I did have in my business over delivering on some of the contract work that I do for other companies. And it wasn't because it was something that was asked of me. When I really looked down into it, it was coming from a place of scarcity because there was some question about what I was delivering, if it would continue to be of value for the company. And so I started putting in a lot of extra time and energy to figure out how to make sure what I was providing was very the most value that it could be. And I really did go into a place of over preparing, spending way too much time and energy in getting information, restructuring things, making sure that the trainings that I was providing were the most value, but it was taking way more of my time than it should have. I also was overthinking other things that I was doing, like presentations that I needed to give. So I was spending a lot of extra time, and maybe you have been there where you are overthinking things, and it took my focus off of what the real goal was. The real goal was to bring in more clients into coaching for my business. Now, you may have a different business, but whether it's you had a goal to buy more properties, or you had a goal to have more listings, or you had a goal to sell more of something, there is probably and you didn't hit it. There is probably a place where you could find that you were holding back, or you lost focus and started focusing on something else that took your time and energy away. Because I know when I put the effort into talking to people and having conversations with people and letting people know what I do in my business, that people want this coaching. Like when someone gets on the phone with me, it is never a matter of whether they want to do the inner work, whether they want to do the transformational work that it takes to really become a leader in their business. There's never a question in people's mind of whether or not they should be doing this work. There is questions of whether they can commit the time to it. Those kinds of things come up. There is, it's really not even a monetary thing, because the investment into it is so worth it. I don't oftentimes have people telling me I can't, it's not a matter of money. It's really more a matter of the time frame of whether they can commit that time to it. So I'm very confident, my point being, I'm very confident that people want what I have. It's a matter of being visible enough and inviting people enough into my world. Well, if my focus is doing behind the scenes work for another client in order to prove that what I'm doing for them is valuable enough, then I'm so focused on a small portion of sustaining a small portion of my income that I'm forgetting over here to grow the revenue. And so that can sometimes happen to you, where you lose focus because scarcity seeps in around that. So that was a really big piece for me, was having that realization that I was spending way too much time on other people's things, going outside of the scope of what was asked of me, out of my own fear of not being enough. That happens all the time. And it doesn't even have to be that you're doing that for other clients. It could be you're spending your time not setting really strong boundaries with family and friends and stepping in and saving them. And it's taking time away from what we really need to be doing for yourself and for your goals. So it can happen in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas, but essentially your business doesn't get the main focus. And so therefore your revenue suffers. So that was one thing that came up for me. And then the second thing was I realized that when I was reaching out to people, I was not being forward enough to say, would you be interested in exploring what it looks like to coach with me? And I think about, I want to be so thoughtful in my interactions with people. I want to provide value for people. When someone meets me, I really do have this idea that I want you to leave a conversation with me, an interaction with me, feeling better than you did when you walked into that conversation. More confident, more inspired, seen, understood, whatever it is. I just really want people to feel that way when they're around me. And there's also this piece in selling things and sales where you don't want to be pushy and you don't want to be seen as sleazy or like all about the money. The truth is, if I don't work with people, I have no business. It's not sustainable. And I do something else. Or I don't, and I stay home with my kids and give them my focus. So it really shifted my mind around the idea that when you make an offer and people come and work with you and you create a sustainable business, it is a gift to the world that you are like showing up for your business. Because if your business is not sustaining you, then you can't help the people that need your help. So I really took this new focus of, why wouldn't I specifically ask people or invite people, hey, I would love the opportunity to talk to you about what my coaching could do to support you in your goals. That's not a self-serving place. It gets to be mutually beneficial. Like if I help you reach your goals and I help you create a business that is sustainable and feels joyful and you love what you're doing and it's making money and you're like living the life that you dream of, people are grateful for that experience. And my clients, when they come to work with me, they stay. They know they do better in coaching and having the accountability and having someone in their corner, someone who really tells them who calls them on their BS and stands for them. And so they really appreciate that. And so why wouldn't I want more people to have that experience? And if someone doesn't want that, I'm also okay to hear no. That's fine. But if you're never asking, so this is my point, is if you are not specifically inviting people into a conversation of how whatever it is you do helps them, whether that's getting them out of their distressed property or you have a product or service that will make their life better, easier, it is your job to share that with people and invite people into your world and show them how what you do enhances their life. And I think a majority of people, out of fear of not wanting to be salesy or sleazy or out of integrity with your core values, don't actually offer the invitation. You think you are, but you're not. And so being direct and clear with people so that they have the opportunity to say yes, no, or even ghost you because of whatever it is, their stuff, you got to do that. So those were the two things that really contributed to not having the revenue where I would have liked it to be this year so far. So then the other side is we looked at my expenses. Like, where was I over expenses? Where was I under expenses? And I was pretty right on with my expenses, which means that at the beginning of the year, when I was working with Jen to create the budget, we were really clear about what I was going to spend money on, how much it would cost, and I stuck really closely to it. Now, that's not to say that we didn't make some changes. So there was a couple things when we built the budget, there was like some I would like to haves. Like, I'll be okay if I don't have these, but it certainly would help if I did. And so I made some choices not to invest in those things yet, because I don't absolutely have to have them. They're nice to haves. We also looked at some places where I could cut back expenses because maybe I wasn't utilizing the services to the max that I could be utilizing them, and it wasn't necessarily going to impact my revenue. So things that I didn't utilize, that didn't impact revenue, and were not in alignment with my direct plan for the second half of the year, we could make some cuts. And that did help to bring the year-end budget a little bit more into alignment. But one of the things I learned in this is I had this sense that I wanted to cut back on everything that was non-essential. And in doing that, some of the places that I wanted to cut, I realized that making an investment or having the option to make that investment directly impacted the possibility of creating or increasing the revenue for the second half of the year. It is far easier for you to make more money in your business than it is for a majority of businesses to cut expenses in order to balance the budget. A lot of times in small businesses, we already run pretty lean. So the idea of doing or cutting back or doing less in your business, meaning maybe you cut some help that you have and you start taking more things on yourself, because that's the gut instinct, is that you want to cut and take more things on yourself. And I was really clear when we were looking at what could be cut and what couldn't, that nothing could land. Anything we cut, nothing could land back on my plate. If it meant that something was landing back on my plate or became my responsibility that wasn't already my responsibility, we weren't going to do it, and it impacted the business. We either chose to not do it anymore because it didn't impact the business, or we kept it because if it goes back on my plate, I guarantee you I will break that part of the business. It can't go back on my plate because I already am where, my capacity is where it can be right now. So that's something really important to consider, is don't just make the decision to cut something and say, well, I can do that myself, so I'm going to put something else back on my plate so that I do it. Because if that is not your zone of genius, if that is not doing that thing, is not driving revenue for your business, you will probably break something else in your business. Your revenue will go down further because your focus is not on revenue generation, or it's something that you don't do well. And so because you don't do it well, you don't want to do it. So it seems like when things are not going the way you want them to, it may seem like I should cut expenses. But I want you to be really careful about anything that's going to put something back on your plate that shouldn't be there. It is easier, say it one more time, for you to increase your revenue than it is for you to cut expenses, many times. Unless you're somebody who's been spending just haphazardly. Maybe there's some places to cut, but we really saw that in playing with the budget, I was like, okay, what if we cut this out, Jen? What if we cut this out? And what I found is that it only changed my gap by like $4,000. It wasn't significant. I was like, well, $4,000, that's so easy for me to make $4,000. It is so easy for me to make $4,000, but for me to have to do what it's going to take for me to cut that $4,000 from a capacity standpoint, that doesn't make sense at all. So on the surface, so much of our programming, so much of our big assumptions would tell you spend less. And that is from scarcity, because spending less is probably, in many circumstances, will hurt you more than help. So that, and you can't make that call until you actually know your numbers. So if you have not been tracking your numbers, you have not set a budget, you have not been reviewing them at least quarterly or at least midway, if you've never done this before, you've got the first half of year of income and expenses, and you've got last year's income and expenses, you can make a budget for the rest of this year if you don't have one yet. And you can look at that now before the year's up and start making some different decisions if you do this. So that was one, is like, oh, I cut there was a few things I cut that would make a bit of a difference. But other than that, we really didn't cut any expenses. What we really focused on was, okay, so what needs to happen the second half of the year in order for me to hit my goal? And what it's going to, and then we looked at, okay, so what is that going to take from me? What is that going to take from you to increase your revenue for the next half of the year? Number one, I've got to be really clear about what I deliver and be very careful of my big assumption of not being enough creeping in and having me over deliver. I've got to be really focused on what I'm supposed to be doing for the contract work that I do for other companies, and be really clear with myself about the amount of time that it needs to take for me to do a really great job. So that's one piece, is really getting clear about my boundaries. Now, if you listened to last week's episode around what happens when you overcommit, I talked about boundary setting and maintaining flexibility and the process of unwinding overcommitment. So if you have found that, oh gosh, you know what, I did exactly the same thing and I'm overcommitted now, there is going to be a process of unwinding it. So make sure you go back and listen to last week's episode. Now, I've got to be really focused on making sure that a majority of my time and energy is spent in revenue generation. That means actually keeping things pretty simple in my business. Very often when we think we want to increase revenue, then the perfectionism, the looking good, the big hits, like really big pushes come up, where now you start creating a really big, elaborate plan for increasing revenue. When the truth is, what's probably needed is a something simpler, something easy to execute. I'm personally focusing on like grassroots connection marketing, where I am looking to be in connection with people, because I know for me, when I connect with people and I get to know people and people get to know me, it's easy for them to say yes. I don't need to spend a lot of time, energy, resources on launching. things, on doing a big push. So a lot of times, especially now in this world where humans are so disconnected from people, it hurts my heart physically when I hear a client tell me that they don't want to get on the phone and talk to their clients or talk to people that they could potentially be doing business with, that they want to do like cold marketing, they want to do cold traffic, they want to do things that keep clients from a distance. They just want people to give them their money and work with them, say yes to work with them, and they really don't want to have those intimate relationship building conversations. And they don't say it like that. They say, I don't have time to get on the phone with people who don't do business with me. They mean it innocently enough, but it hurts my heart because I think that when you slow down enough to get to know a human being and connect with them and learn what it is that they need, especially when we're talking about wealth building. So who do I work with? Women who are buying distressed properties from distressed homeowners who could use compassion and understanding. If you are transactional with people, and I see this all the time in the real estate world where it is they are treated like a transaction. Even when I hear the radio, we buy houses cash, fast cash for your house. And it's mechanical. It's spoken mechanically. The reason that people are successful in getting amazing deals below market value, even when the market was high and tough. My mom was one of them. She's so compassionate with her distressed sellers. They work with her and they literally say, I chose to work with you because I really trust you, or I feel like you really care about this property, or I feel like you really care about me. And so when you're really transactional, you don't care about the human behind the problem that you're solving. It hurts my heart because there's a little bit of entitlement. And also I think to myself, like, what has happened that you can't handle the emotion of sitting with someone to solve their problem, and you can't take that connection with someone, that you've got some big assumption that forces you to create distance between you and your customer or your client, whoever it is. Because I think so much of the business that can be done with people, the simple business that could change for so many people, is really in the connection that you build with people. Now, can you start to systemize things as you grow your business and you get bigger and do things where you learn how to speak with that same kind of compassion and understanding, and your marketing starts to do better and you can do it on a wider scale in its growth? Yes. But I truly believe your best return on investment is when you can really understand your customer at a level, and that takes getting into the trenches with them. And so many people have not taken the time to get to know their customers and who is working with them at a level where they understand them as a person and what really lights them up and drives them to what they desire and what they fear. And you don't know your client like that. How do you put together your marketing? How do you put together anything scalable without knowing your people at that intimate level? That's kind of a tangent that I go down around that intimacy piece, but I'm really focused on not making things complicated. And I'm going to recommend that you do the same thing. If your revenue is not where you want it to be, and I know that this is actually something that's happening, because I said to Jen, like, is it me? Because I worked really hard in the first half of the year. I did a lot of things. I tried a lot of things. I made a lot of offers. I said, is it me, is it like I'm surprised that my revenue suffered the way that it did because I did take a lot of action. Even though I was distracted, I also did take a lot of action that didn't pan out. So I said, I see where my mindset got in the way, but also, what about this other thing? And she said, no, it's definitely a trend. She said, I have spoken to 4, including you, me, meaning me. I've spoken to 4 entrepreneurs, all in different businesses, and all four of you have the same scenario where revenue should have come in and it didn't the way that we expected it to. And it wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't for lack of execution. It just didn't. So there is, and I think a reason I want to offer that to you is there is an environment outside of ourselves that we are dealing with. It is not purely only your mindset. But when that happens, we have to adjust. And so my choice in doing this really simple marketing and focusing on building connections and looking at relationship marketing comes from my assessment that there's a lot of distrust in the world right now. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. There is a lot of noise and marketing in the world. And my feeling is that building relationships and focusing on relationship marketing will help me meet my clients where they are and make them feel safe and seen and build trust in a way that cuts through the noise of social media and email. There's so much junk in the email. I do send emails, but when I focus on going beyond just sending the email, but noticing who opened the email, who responded to the email, and then having a legitimate heart-to-heart conversation with that person, it is my opinion that that is going to go so much farther and spread so much more good, whether someone chooses to do business with me or not. I know that that person will leave that conversation with me in a better place. And that is doing good in the world, in the current environment that we're in. So I don't necessarily think that you have to start cutting back more than you probably need to show up bigger, but also more simply. And that is probably going to drive more in your business potentially than not. Now, every situation is different. So until I get in and I look at your business and where income is coming from and where your expenses are going out and what your goals are in business that you're trying to achieve and what your mindset is, being able to dig into all that. Obviously, we couldn't I couldn't tell you specifically what's needed in your business without talking to you. But this is what I went through in mine, and I know I'm not the only one. And so what I hope you took away from today was, number one, financials and tracking your financials is really important. Your financials will show you your mindset and where you're getting in your way. And if you can't see it, a trusted coach like someone like myself can help you point that out. And to watch out for the knee-jerk response of wanting to pull back and retreat into your shell when things haven't gone the way you thought that they should, especially in times like this, that's quite likely the opposite of what you should be doing. So with all of that being said, I'm sending you so much love. And if Jonathan were here, he would say, be well.